Wake Me Up After the Apocalypse by Evil Goo. Chapter 7. What Ocean Is This? Year 1, Day 162. We thought there were sleepwalkers at Saboti. It was Herades, actually, who pointed out that, given the Vine's dislike of coding, the naturally coded island would probably be pretty safe from its influence. It was strange that no one on Witheria had thought of it before. The people we saw below were not infected. We thought that meant they were safe, like us. I think I'll break this entry into two parts, my story and the island's story. My story. I was captured by a rogue band of former Marines in a desperate attempt to hostage me back for supplies. I suspect what they really wanted was to hijack a skyboat, but when it became apparent no one was coming to rescue me, they started talking about things they could do to show my group that they meant business. Stupid, empty threats that got more and more violent for shock value. I believe they ended on sending body parts, one by one, into the sky in bubbles toward the floating island. I didn't think they'd do it, but some of their less creative ideas seemed more plausible, and certainly involved various kinds of torture I was not at all up for. Two of their number defaulted, and when they were placed on guard, they rescued me, freed me, and helped me sneak past the others in their camp. I figured there were two kinds of Marines still alive on the island, the very cunning and the very cruel. The twins were more of the first variety, and gave their names as Saber and Rebus when pressed. They were grinning a bit too much, so I think it's an inside joke. No one's mother is that vicious. They're with us now. We'll try not to go back to Saboti again until they all kill each other. Law's words. The island story. Saboti Archipelago is a tourist area where marine details, pirate crews, and sightseers alike make up over 50% of the population on any given day. A land of many ports, their various traders rely on steady shipments and tend to focus on cheap, useless goods and services to catch those tourist berries. When the ocean ran red and anyone who tried to escape were overrun with vines, things fell apart rather quickly. According to the twins, food became scarce within a month. There was no wildlife to speak of, no crops could grow on the coated soil, and the vines had poisoned all of the remaining fish in the ocean with spores. There were people starving who felt they had no choice and ate the fish they caught anyway, becoming paralyzed and spreading the spore throughout wide swaths of Zone 40. As food got scarce, people got mean. Soon, only the really mean were left alive, hunting birds and hoarding canned goods. By the end of Year 1, the only ones left alive were a few pirate groups intermixed with the random citizen or two, and one large marine faction. By the time we got there, it was down to one large pirate group with 3 to 4 devil fruit users, and the Marines. I think Law is right. Soon, they'll all kill each other. Usopp blinked in the harsh light of day, his eyes sensitive to the brightness, though it felt nice against his skin. He had looped the goggles around his neck, though they still confused the hell out of him. He'd left that pair on Boyne Archipelago. He knew he had. They had broken, one lens completely cracked, and he had acquired a new pair, a better pair, on his way to meet up with everyone. How had Law and Nami produced these from the ether? He touched his head, feeling for some kind of wound. Maybe he did have some kind of brain damage. Maybe he was forgetting things. Clearly the evidence was right around his neck that he was wrong about breaking them, but how? So this building is Law's lab. That illness you had, he researches it here. He created the cure that healed you, the panacea. It also serves as our infirmary and connects to the observation deck. Observation deck? Is this Is this some kind of huge ship, like Thriller Bark? The room he was in was pretty big. He assumed they were on dry land, but that could have been a misinterpretation on his part. They had certainly seen ships in the past that were massive in scale. You couldn't jump to conclusions about such things on the Grand Line. Nami seemed happy to answer questions about the village, but was hesitant whenever he mentioned their crew or his accident. No, it's an island. She grinned wide and honestly, for once without that strange hint of sadness hidden behind her eyes. We're actually flying, like Skypiea, but with a rudimentary directional system, so Witheria? Usopp questioned, quite proud of himself for remembering the name. Nami froze. Her eyes were much too wide, her brows raised nearly to her hairline. She looked, quite frankly, as if he had slapped her. Am I wrong? He was actually pretty shook by her incomprehensible reaction. What was he missing? No, you're right. Did you see a sign or something? She asked, spinning full around. A hand to her forehead to shield her eyes from the sun, as if looking for some town sign she'd never noticed before. There was no sign. No, you told me about it, remember? When we met back up on Saboti. We met up in that bar and we exchanged stories from our 2-year hiatus while looking for the others, and why are you looking at me like that? I don't know. I don't understand what's happening right now. There's no way you would have that information. What? He stopped, feeling extremely frustrated. He moved in front of her, forcing her to stop walking too, and placed both hands on her shoulders, giving her a little shake. I think I've been patient long enough. Nami, just tell me what's going on, because honestly, I don't think I can compartmentalize my anxiety much longer, and all of my danger meters are going off, and I can't pinpoint why. She snorted, brushing his hands from her shoulders and shooting him a glare over being manhandled. It was very Nami-like, and soothed his fears over theory number 2159 running through his head, that she had been replaced with an imposter, or a robot. Let's finish the tour and then I'll fill you in. Please, Usopp, this is hard for me. Maybe it was the please, but something gave him pause in his whining, though it also made his danger meters fly past acceptable parameters and break. He felt himself start to sweat, and it wasn't from the pleasantly warm weather. Witheria was a very pleasant little space, well landscaped and spacious, with farmland in the distance and neat little homes nestled between fields. There were several buildings close to the infirmary, clustered around a garden-like area blooming with flowers and strange wispy plants that hummed and moved against the wind. Nami brought him to the aforementioned observation deck, where 3 elderly men, dressed exactly as any honest-to-God wizard Usopp had ever seen illustrated, were poking at dials and knobs and writing notes on charts while a giant orb of lightning fizzled overhead. There was a whole curved wall of windows, providing easy views to the ocean. What ocean is this? Usopp whispered, trying to control his breathing so he wouldn't sound too panicky. He found himself approaching the window without even realizing his feet were moving, fingers pressed into the glass as he gazed at the unsettling view outside. They were definitely up high. He could see fluffy clouds and blue skies and even the shadow of Witheria over the water, but the water was red. It was a bright, blood-red color, glistening against the sunlight and reflecting a gem-like shine, like an endless expanse of rubies. It's every ocean. It's sick with something similar to what you had, Nami explained nonsensically, and something very heavy began to settle on Usopp's chest. He stared out the window, willing what was very plainly right in front of him to make some kind of sense. He remembered that feeling, days ago, years ago, when he was talking to Nami and Wano and feeling like he was falling, his stomach dropping out from under him. It was the feeling of being in a dream, your mind tricking you into terror in what seemed to be some kind of prank on itself. This, though, this current feeling in his stomach of dropping was much different. This was a nausea that weighed him down, a dread building beyond simple panic and cowardice. He was dropping down a dark well, and he had no idea what was at the bottom. Nami touched his arm, and he jumped, gasping. "Are you okay?" "What kind of question is that? I am definitely not okay. Does that look okay to you?" He gestured wildly at the ocean view, heart pulsing somewhere right at the back of his throat, his mind spinning. "No," Nami responded succinctly, then did the strangest goddamn thing Usopp had ever seen her do. She turned to the three old men and began introducing them to him, like it was just business as usual. She smiled pleasantly, if a little stiffly, and in return the wizards gave him an enthusiastic greeting. He had no idea what their names were. He was in a stupor. There was a buzzing sounding in his ears, a liquid slowness to the world around him as he watched Nami play a perfect part. Was it for his benefit? Surely he was the only one here who didn't know what was going on. They were all far too calm about the red ocean out their window. "Good. We'll stop by the supply building next. I'm in charge of inventory, but requisitions go through the scholars. It's their island, after all. We're just living on it." Living on it? That would imply some amount of time and investment on Nami's part. Had she been here the entire 4 years he had been unconscious? Why? Was she looking after him? No, she wouldn't do that. Give him to a doctor and continue Luffy's journey to the One Piece. Luffy couldn't go anywhere without Nami. She would never abandon her captain. And as she had so dramatically reiterated to him earlier, their captain would also never leave either of them behind. Not willingly. Was Luffy in some kind of trouble? The supply room, it turned out, was an old barn full of carefully labeled metal shelves, set in rows based on item type. There was a pantry section, everything sealed carefully in boxes, and a clothing section organized by size. Nami scanned the aisles, humming a little as she searched. "You're what, 30-inch waist?" Maybe. I lost some of my muscle mass, I guess, sleeping so long." Nami gave him another one of those bewildered looks that were becoming so common between them, like he'd said something utterly preposterous, and he felt the need to defend himself. "Hey, come on, don't tell me you never noticed. You've commented more than once. I got strong after Saboti." Something happened just then, to the inquisitive spark in Nami's eyes. It was a pop of understanding, like his words had set some last slide into place, and they were finally understanding one another. He wished he could have the same epiphany. He was confused as hell. "I see," she said. "Okay, after Saboti. We'll have to have a talk about that soon, but I get it. I don't remember a lot after Saboti, Usopp, at least not the way you do." He wanted to ask a follow-up to that, but she was plowing ahead and tearing open boxes, searching. Lucky for you, Ben and Dion are huge, the twins, Law, and the otaku are pretty tall, and the old men exclusively wear homemade robes and never leave the island, so they rarely need new clothes. So, we have quite a few leftovers in your middle range size. She threw a few things at him, and he stood there, unsure what to actually do with the small mound barely in his grasp, until she came around with a massive tote bag to put them in. He put the clothes in the tote, and added the kabuto he'd been carrying around as well. At the last second, he spied something on one of the shelves, a bag. It was very much like the bag he had picked up after he left Boyne, but made of something smooth and leathery. The bag that, for some reason, had been left behind by Nami and Law when they had saved him. It had a ball clasp at the top and a long strap. It would be a comfortable replacement. He barely pointed at it, Nami's eyes following his gaze, when she grabbed it and shoved it on top of the tote for him to take. "We'll get you materials to make ammo, too, later, so you can fill the bag." It was reassuring that she understood so immediately what he wanted most in that moment. He was vastly more uncomfortable being unarmed. In a pinch, he could use rocks, but just get me a list of what you need. She went to a corkboard next. There were numerous pins on the board, numbers drawn with marker on masking tape next to each pin. On a few of said pins, there were keys. It reminded Usopp of a hotel check-in, and maybe that wasn't a bad analogy. She tossed a set of keys to him, and he caught them in one hand, his confusion like a perpetual feature of his face now. "Like Sale said, you can have number 22. Usopp nodded, as if he had heard anything of that conversation where he had apparently been given a house. This was too weird. How long were they planning on sticking around here? "How do they have so many extra houses?" Usopp asked, indicating the board. There were at least 7 more left. Nami frowned. "I'm not completely sure. This place was originally more like a school or research facility. I think it was built with the purpose of changing populations fairly regularly. The houses are pretty small and not designed for families. Don't expect a palace." Usopp nodded absently, clutching the key. "How long? Hey, come on. There's one more thing we need to do. Then we'll get you settled and talk." Okay. He could play along a little longer. There was a time where he might have complained a lot more about the weirdness and been a lot more bold about calling out Nami's annoyingly avoidant attitude. He had matured since then. He could be the strong, stoic type, right? Yeah. Besides, something about the way she was acting made him worried about her. She was scared of something. He didn't want to press too much, and besides, Nami was stubborn. If she said she wouldn't tell him everything until after the tour, she would, but not a moment before. "Ugh, fine. But really, Nami, my question list is growing and growing here. You could at least lower my debt, since your secretiveness is causing me mental stress." Yes, he could be very cool and stoic and not at all whiny.